Welcome to a special Latino edition of Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening television news broadcasting live and available on demand. Available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, and El Facebook. It's time to queer up the news from the LGBTQ plus Latino perspective.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
It's Thursday, August 4th, 2022. It's 8 p.m. We are live and we're literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we are going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight. I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Tarek Turjman, this evening, and we're bringing you the news of the perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across the planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens, you will see and hear it.
Happening Out Television Network is a 501c3 nonprofit media platform in the television and radio model of PBS and NPR, but for our LGBTQ plus community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ plus media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 36 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus and broader community.
Let's welcome I'm your main anchor, Tarek Turjman. I'm from Guatemala. But now let's welcome your anchor, DJ Nena, a homegrown Garden State girl and military veteran who was fascinated with MTV and radio at an early age. DJ Nena's early exposure led her to the entertainment industry. She has been a local DJ and music producer for the LGBTQ plus community of South Florida for over 20 years. Good evening, DJ Nena.
Wepa, thanks for the welcome. Ahora sí.
Dale.
It's Latino Takeover, which means we're all going to get very, very ratchet. Let's welcome anchor Chris Vila. Chris is a Miami native and is a professor of sociology and psychology who teaches at Nova Southeastern University and Broward College. He is also an LGBTQ plus advocate who volunteers with numerous organizations, and he is the administrator of Spill the Tea, Wilton Manor's Facebook group. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Nena. Welcome. Thank you. Let's welcome Evyn Almanzar, a trans student at JP Taravella High School, where he recently finished his freshman year. He has been publicly speaking out as an advocate for mental health and queer student rights since the age of 12. A lover of writing and nature who often enjoys both at the same time. Welcome, Evyn.
Hola, familia. Let's welcome anchor chef Josie. Yay. She is a Bravo TV top chef and the master of the popular champagne and oyster celebration restaurant Bubbles and Pearls on the heart of the famous Wilton Drive. Yes. She's also known by her alter ego, DJ Lady Snack Daddy. Welcome, Chef Josie.
Woo! Because we're serving up the snacks. Everyone stay hungry, y'all. So we are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines for Thursday, August 4th.
Now, let's queer up South Florida and Florida. Does Miami-Dade Latino LGBTQ plus escape to Broward County because of internal and external homophobia? Miami-Dade County is a vacation mecca, offering beaches, entertainment, and international culture with a huge population of residents from Latin American countries. While there's a large LGBTQ plus community in Miami-Dade, myself, there's also a lot of hatred and targets to the community. Many residents of Miami come from countries in the Caribbean that still have colonial-era values, and acceptance of LGBTQ plus individuals by those residents is frequently low. So yes. Without a central neighborhood, resources like Pride Lines, the oldest direct service LGBTQ plus community center in South Florida, have challenges reaching the LGBTQ plus people in the county. This has led to a migration of sorts of the gay community as many move north to Fort Lauderdale, Wilton Manors, and Oakland Park to access both cheaper housing and a more centralized community.
You know, this story is so important because I lived this story. I am originally from Miami, and I found more and more over time, it became less and less LGBTQ friendly.
Mm.
And so that's part of the reason why I moved to the Oakland Park, Wilton Manors area. I just got sick of living someone else's life, you know, as a third-class citizen. And so now, since I've moved up here, it's been a game changer. I live my full authentic life. I'm celebrated here. I'm not just tolerated.
Mm.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I experienced homophobia living in Miami-Dade County. Things changed. In the 90s, it was different.
Right.
I'm dating myself here now, but things were different. There was a lot larger LGBT palpable community. And over time, that changed, along with demographics. And so it's not surprising in the commentary that when we see that, you know, a large percentage of people are from other places in Latin America and the Caribbean with those kinds of cultural attitudes, it makes sense that you see this growing sort of and shrinking gay community, LGBTQ community, and a rise in the overt homophobia.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of statistics on this if anyone's interested. But you know, even though there have been some
Follow you where?
It's unfortunate because those attitudes are reflected here in South Florida.
Right.
Because if you have a large, I think it's something like, according to census data, like 50-something% foreign born, those attitudes and cultures and norms
100%.
are reflected here in Miami-Dade County, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, why I feel
Well,
very
there's
strongly.
also, you know, I grew up in Hialeah, and Hialeah, come on, you know, that's a huge Cuban machismo and Catholic, and so there's the religious, you know, influence, and then there's also
Political.
that, you know, the cultural, the political. There's so much. And so Miami-Dade, it depends really which pocket of Miami-Dade you're in as well.
Yeah.
And then it's, you know, it's not as concentrated. Like, I feel so grateful to be living in Wilton Manors because we're like the gayest place on planet Earth. And then every single neighboring community, it's just like we're growing, we're spreading. And like you said, acceptance, not tolerance. And it's safe.
I moved to Miami almost 20 years ago. When I moved, you could say South Beach was still kind of a neighborhood. You had Lincoln Road, and like there was at least 4 or 6 gay businesses there, and you would go there on any day of the week and see gay people. That no longer exists. That was completely gentrified. After that, Wynwood kind of became a gay hub. Not anymore. That's been completely gentrified. So the gays in Miami have been used basically to gentrify neighborhoods, but we don't have one of our own. I live in downtown now, and I see a lot of queer people, but there's not a queer bar. There's not a community or a center, anything like that. We like to say in Miami that we're like New York, like we're so accepting that we don't need gay bars because you can be gay anywhere. And I've been to New York.
If another heterosexual person tells me that, I'm going to scream because it isn't that way.
It isn't that way.
If you're lucky enough to be in a relationship, then you're insulated somewhat, and you can kind of go to a restaurant and you and your partner don't feel it as much. But if you're single and you're LGBTQ, you're on your own, kid.
In Miami-Dade, well, in Wynwood was a neighborhood that, you know, was built a lot because of the gay community. And a few years ago, still, you had the Electric Pickle and all these little bars who weren't gay, but they was gay, you know?
But they were very gay friendly.
They're very gay friendly.
I
And there
miss
was a
the
lot
good
of
old
gay
days
staff,
of-
too. So you felt it, but all that is closed now. And now I've had 2 cases of friends who weren't let into venues into venues in Wynwood because they looked too queer.
You know,
Wow. Did not know this.
Maybe you all can relate to this. This is a paradox because on the one hand, I'm very proud of my Hispanic Latino ancestry and I celebrate our culture. But at the same time, there's this issue with homophobia and we can't deny it. It's well documented in the literature. And so it's unfortunate because I'm sure as you all feel very proud of your heritage as I do, but we're excluded in many ways, you know? And I just think that's something that I'm grateful
And Evyn,
that we talk about.
I hear you jumping in there over here, but you know, we got the
question.
piranhas in the tank tonight, okay?
Sorry, Latinos are taking over.
It's
You
fine.
want to
Is
finish
that
this up?
I haven't been alive long enough to experience the things you guys are talking about of gentrification of neighborhoods. I've heard about it and I've seen it like in news and stuff, but I haven't like experienced it firsthand. And I wanted to know, that while moving away from Miami-Dade, have you felt like any separation from your own culture and like heritage?
Well, no, because I travel back and forth. I work at different institutions in Broward and Miami-Dade County, but it's a palpable difference. And even in the way I'm treated at these different institutions, I know where I am by how I'm treated by office staff, fellow colleagues. It's real. And so, no, I think because of my connection to my family and friends, but you know, it's a double-edged sword. It's an unfortunate situation. And I think we can make room for change. I think this is part of why we're talking about this, is not just to complain about it, but let's make some changes. Let's unite. Let's stand up to this kind of bigotry within our community. If not for us to say it, who's going to say it for us? Yeah. Right?
Well, I think also what's happening, just so you guys know, I hear in the water that there are a lot of Latin concept restaurants and entertainment type of offerings that are moving and looking at Fort Lauderdale. So we may not have escaped. We may have just migrated.
Fortunately, we have to move on to the next topic, but that's true. What's happening in Miami is that they're gentrifying the Latinos out in a way.
Oh.
International companies are coming and taking over all that retail.
That's not cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. Closing that out, I'll say that I moved here in 2000, and I remember the good old days of Lincoln Road.
Yeah.
You know, Lincoln Road, you could
I
walk
wasn't even
up
born.
freely, and it was comfortable. I went to Lincoln Road
Yeah,
recently, and I did not know where I was.
Yeah. It's
So
different.
I'm definitely out of Kansas.
Yeah, it's horrible. And go to Wynwood, any of those neighborhoods, it's losing a lot of the culture, and a lot of that was LGBTQ people, LGBTQ plus people. And sorry, we need to mention that our house just got sued for having drag queens.
Oy.
And that was one of the last Wynwood gay institutions, and they might not be able to have drag
Can we
shows
speak to this? It's not
That's
global
crazy.
warming or the war in Iran, Ukraine,
drag queens.
or
Yeah.
the pandemic or
weapons or the other
monkeypox
weapons.
or monkeypox
None
or
of these. No.
poverty.
It's
It's
drag
drag
It's
queens.
those darn drag queens.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there is
If
no
we only
problematic.
solve that problem, it's pathetic. It's a distraction. It's meant to be a distraction. Anywho.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well, how about this? Let's go ahead and queer up the worldview. All right? Let's see what's going on there. Cuba.
Yes.
On the verge of Democratic vote to make gay marriage and adoption legal. Last month, Cuba's parliament announced a new family code that would legalize same-sex marriage as well as allow same-sex couples to adopt. The new family code will be voted on by the Cuban people in a special referendum on September 25th. In 2019, activists had pushed for an amendment allowing for same-sex marriage to be added to the Constitution, but the government removed it just before the vote after pressure from the conservative and religious groups. There are those that fear the family-approved family code will be modified in the same way before the referendum can be held. Kudos to Cuba, though.
Hey, listen, we
About
were there.
time.
It's happening out west, and I swear, we went there as a production, and we did not go there to start a riot, but apparently one did break out while we were there.
Are you sure?
Coincidence.
And
You started it.
and we were celebrating LGBTQ. It was the first, I believe, the first Pride. And it was amazing. Our people are there and they get to be seen and heard. Maybe this is the first step to healing that machismo and that, just that discriminating way that is really deep in our Latin communities. And maybe we can start when a country like Cuba, and when they can make this kind of decision to help make a space for LGBTQ in their communist, fascist country,
I'm amazed.
then maybe some other Latin countries will then follow lead.
Well, I'm sorry, were you going to say?
No, go ahead.
I'm just going to say this was discussed on another evening here on Queer News Tonight with Al, and I forget the guest anchor. And on the one hand, yes, it appears like progress, but
You need to
it
think.
seems more like posturing to me. I know many people from the exile community, and I know the realities of the history of gay people in Cuba, how they were forced into labor camps. Some of you might remember the film Before Night Falls from 2001, and that depicts the reality of homophobia. So unless we're all equal, it goes back to that civil rights thing. it sounds good, it looks good on paper, but if the country is still a dictatorship and people don't have civil rights, so congratulations, you and your husband got married, but please go work in the sugarcane factory. I mean, like, or you get arrested.
Well, I mean, if everyone is working in the sugarcane factory, I mean, I'm going to say that this is still a step in the right direction. You get what I mean?
I hear you.
You're being that
No,
same
I hear
area
you
of
too,
it.
and I'm sure that for a lot of Cubans, it means a lot, especially to be able to adopt. I know that that's very important in Cuba right now. But let's also consider that Cuba is coming, or still, in a dire economic state.
No.
People were out on the streets protesting every day. Of course, we don't get to see most of it, but we were, because we, you know, of social media, we were able to see it because they were dying of poverty and they didn't have access to a lot of healthcare and stuff like that. So I can't help but feel that this is a way to give the people something without giving them much. Because as important as gay marriage is and gay adoption is, in a dire situation that Cuba is in, how important can it be?
It's posturing to appear progressive while censoring and arresting people. And also, as tourists going to the island, I'm sure you had a lovely stay at a hotel and ate very well, whereas the people who live there don't.
Yeah.
You know, so we can't forget the reality.
Well, the reality of that is yes, it could have been an insulated trip for me. But my wife and I are not those people, and we went out into the public. You know, we went down the streets, we got lost in different places, went down the alleys. I must have walked. I don't even know. I probably walked the island. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. But the reality of it is that I see that. You know, I hear what you're saying. I do. But we have to really try to do our best to recognize when we're moving in the right direction, because if we don't celebrate these small wins, there will not be any larger wins to follow, because we come from then that place of it's just not enough, it's not enough. Well, you know, yes, dictatorship, we have a problem. That's the that's the overhead, you know.
Even in countries that are not dictatorships, in Latin America, places like Colombia, places like Venezuela, who do have rights and protections for LGBT, even marriage rights and adoption rights. A lot of places in Latin America have come around since 2016. However, the culture is different. The way that the police handle hate crimes is not really there. And so there's a lot of people who are still suffering, even in those democratic countries that have, on the paper, some rights protecting LGBTQ, but in practice, it's quite another thing.
I come from a country, sorry to just throw this in there just to piggyback on it. I come from Guatemala, and Guatemala is an American ally, is a capitalism, it's fully democratic, right? And there's no gay protections, there's no abortion rights, there's no gay rights. It's a dire state for women and queers. But we are an American ally, and we're supported, and we're called a free country. So, you know, it's almost like, it's so weird that
it's a hypocrisy.
It's a hypocrisy.
It's called hypocrisy.
You have to figure out what free.
So if tomorrow they came up with some gay thing in Guatemala, some gay rights for marriage, which would be crazy, I would be very skeptical of.
Can I give you some stats? 4 LGBTQ plus people are murdered every year in Latin American, Caribbean countries. At least 1,300 LGBTQ people are murdered in Latin America. 90% of those murders occur in Colombia, Mexico, and Honduras.
Wow.
So, and those are countries that are not dictatorships under a communist regime. So it's a cultural thing, and it's something I don't know how we're going to get past, but I mean, a lot of it is rooted in colonialism, and a lot of the homophobia is rooted in colonialism. And I can explain that if anyone wanted to know. But
when we think about that too, because I mean, this conversation could get really deep right now, okay? Because honestly, now you're opening up a Pandora box, you know? When we're sitting here in the United States and we're looking at, you talk about, you know, Cuba posturing. Well, we could probably say the same thing about the United States.
A lot of our gay.
I was actually going to make that point. It's actually really crazy.
In my belief, the Democratic Party uses gay rights to posture all the time.
I mean, and clearly it's happening in Guatemala, right? A free democratic, you know, U.S. ally. And so when we're talking about this, I just look at it, I try to really see the silver lining.
You're right.
Because we can see it as posturing and throughout many nations right now. And the reality of it is, as a LGBTQ community, we have to be working on getting us unified.
Absolutely.
And that's us Latinos, because my God, how many shades of Latino are there? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And then and then everything, and then everyone else. So, and we have a young person here, a high school student, sitting at the table, involved in this conversation, and I think it's so important for like your generation that you're Z, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Whew. I can't keep up.
No. Don't worry. I'm not an iPad kid.
Oh, okay.
Not an iPad kid.
Hey, man, use it to your advantage,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. But it's great. It's great. And especially for the Cubans there, who I feel have been living with so many, feeling really not supported at all by their government and stuff. It must feel amazing to have achieved maybe that. Because I do give you that. This has to be the product of the fighting of many Cuban activists there.
But we need the stats.
Anyway,
we need you to keep that.
We
That's
need
why
to
this
move
is
on to our next story, y'all.
multi-pronged.
We need to move on to the next story. All right. So please, Chris, enlighten us.
Now we queer up the USA view. America's mass gun violence epidemic won't let Latino LGBTQ plus community heal. From LatinX Pulse attack. On June 12th, 2016, a gunman opened fire inside of Pulse nightclub in Orlando. The shooter originally intended for his attack to be at Disney Springs, but due to heavy security at the shopping district, he changed his target to a nightclub. He narrowed his choices to Eve nightclub or Pulse before finally deciding on Pulse. Without knowing who his targets were, he proceeded to enact what was at the time the largest mass shooting in the United States. 49 members of the LGBT plus and Latin community were killed that night, with 58 others being injured. Friday nights were Latin night at Pulse, and it was one of the few LGBTQ plus bars in Orlando that was welcoming of the large but scattered Latin community in Central Florida. With nearly 400 shootings just in 2022, the hope for change that many had after the Pulse shooting has been shattered. And the trauma experienced by those involved stays fresh in the minds of the communities most affected by the events, the LGBTQ plus and Latin communities.
I can still remember that day. And how dire, it's crazy to hear it again. 40 people were murdered.
More.
And
Actually, I believe
There's
58.
more.
58, right?
50.
Sorry.
58.
Sorry, 58 people lost their lives. And yeah, we're I believe, in a worse state now in terms of gun ownership and gun violence in public spaces that we were back then. And it's really sad to see. And we just had that case in Houston with the children in the school, and it affected mainly Latinos. So that was very interesting as a community to go through.
I mean, how many people, innocent children, have to die?
Apparently,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's not about that anymore.
Because you know why?
Yeah.
The real threat are the drag queens, right?
It's not even that. It's just
Right.
like, even as a 15, about to be 16-year-old kid, I've seen the effects of gun violence in my own neighborhoods. And like,
Right.
I was in 5th grade with the Parkland shooting. I knew a girl who was killed.
I'm sorry.
That's one of those things that, like, as a little kid, you don't really understand until you see it every day as you get older. And then coming to terms with like being queer and Hispanic in like the times that we're in, it's like, yes, it's liberating. Yes, it's great. It's amazing. Until how many kids go and get shot up again?
Right.
So it's like, when they're saying that we're not able to really move on from any of this, it's not a lie, because we do have to end up, I leave my house and I go to school and I still have that fear of like, what if something happens?
Yeah.
Because like, we have the trainings, it's like, okay, code red, we push everything in front of the door, we go to the corner, but that has an emotional effect on kids.
Of
you know?
course.
And like, it's
Totally.
not even that. It's just like, it's like,
Traumatizing.
we can prepare you all throughout your entire, I've been doing this stuff since I was in elementary school.
Wow.
In 2nd grade, we were on lockdown because there was a threat made online about to shoot up our school
Yeah.
for a party that we were having on the last few days of school.
It's unacceptable.
And we're over here.
We're not doing, Congress isn't doing anything.
No.
No.
They're
And-
bought out by the NRA, and it's just, we need to have safe gun laws. No one's saying to get rid of the Second Amendment, but We can't.
No
go
one
around
needs a machine
pretending-
gun.
And
No.
there has to
No
be,
American
there has
citizen
to be
needs
vetting.
an automatic.
But that's
weapon.
the thing. It's become a culture where we see mostly white, I've only seen white, American or of European descent families like start gifting their children guns when they turn 16 and 15, you
That is
know.
the weirdest
and
thing I've
that's
ever heard.
an American
it's regional,
culture
too.
that's quite extreme.
I mean, guys,
as an outsider, I'm a Latino. I came from one of the most dangerous countries in the world, Guatemala, where everyone had a gun and they didn't want it. And I came here because for the first time, I could just walk down the street and buy, you could never just have the freedom you have here because of the gun violence. So for me, it's crazy because I was escaping gun violence only to come
see
and
more.
see more gun violence.
So I want to clear something up because look, we have allies across, cultural lines, okay? And we make it look like it is all white people
No, it's not.
toting
It's not.
toting
It's not.
guns. But I'll tell you, I know a lot of Latino gun-toting lovers
too.
who have an arsenal.
That's most of my.
Okay, yeah. I mean, and listen, I'm not a gun owner, but I would be. And I'm not saying that there should be a ban on any weapons.
I agree.
I believe that civilians don't need automatic
Sub-automatic
That's
machine
a
gun.
sub-automatic.
that's
I mean,
absolutely right.
why do we need that? I just don't understand why we would need anything like that unless we're going to war or we're out to kill something. And
When we talk about emasculation in guns, a lot of that is posturing around feeling more macho and feeling more in power. And feeling, the bigger your gun, and then this sort of empowerment thing. Because people, I guess,
And how did that
And
affect?
to add to that, and what I was saying before about American culture loving guns, a lot of immigrants start getting into the whole gun ownership thing because they want to Americanize themselves. They want to, be like the Americans. So it's kind of terrorizing.
I want to know what we can do as a community also to really protect our community when we throw these big parties and we're
We're a
doing
soft
these kind of
target.
things. Because we are a soft target. We want everybody to come to the party, and a lot of people are out of their minds and enjoying the music and having their experience. So that being said, are these spaces safe for us? And when we're seeing schools getting shot up, what makes us think that our nights are safer than the school?
We're in a
They're
fool's
not.
paradise.
That's the whole thing.
They're not.
They're not.
It
They're
is
not.
now a risk
It's-
wherever you go.
It becomes
Especially
it
The
doesn't
mall,
become-
Large
The
gathering.
nightclubs.
Exactly. It doesn't just
schools.
become just a shooting. It then becomes, because I understand it's like the mass shootings, but we're not even bringing to light all of the drive-bys that happen.
Oh, yeah.
All of the crime that happens from our own people to ourselves.
There's a lot of now traffic rage or rage,
Road rage.
Yeah.
road rage.
Yep.
That's in Miami-Dade. We've had like 4 reports in the last few months of people taking out their guns on each other. I remember Guatemala when that would happen, and people would kill each other just because everyone just had so much guns, and not because people actually wanted to kill each other.
Josie,
So
to your
I've kind
point
of
about
lived
being a
through
soft
it.
target, we did have a visit shortly after the election results. And I don't know if you know this, I posted it on my Spill the Tea account that a group came with hate, a large group protesting and calling out slurs against the LGBT community. And rather than take the bait, I was really impressed that Stephen Neal, our violinist, part of the Synergy Twins, met that hate mob with love and started playing music. And they were dumbfounded. They didn't know how to react to that. They were hoping to start a fight. But it goes to show, as wonderful as his actions were, it goes to show that people do know we're here, they don't like it, and they have made their presence known more than once. And so we were lucky that time, thanks to Stephen Neal and his genius being an artist, and he made them leave just with music, as opposed to the fight that they were looking for. So you're right, we have to be more cognizant and vigilant and not take it for granted.
Well, a few years ago, I attended the 3 Point Festival, which is a very artsy, a lot of queer people attend to it. It's a music festival in Wynwood, right? And it's very progressive festival, and a lot of progressive-minded people go to this fest. And it was announced, I guess, last year and the year before was the first time that no guns would be allowed anymore. And this was a huge headline. And first of all, as someone who's been there, I was like, there was guns?
Yes,
Second
there
of
were.
all, the madness that ensued, the people who were mad, saying they weren't going to go anymore because they couldn't carry their gun. I couldn't believe that I was around so many people with guns. So if you think that you're in a progressive festival and you're surrounded by people who are not armed, you are wrong.
Yeah.
All right? Anyway.
It's called a concealed weapons permit for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, Evan, you want to take us to our next story?
Yeah, of course. Now it's time to queer up the worldview. LGBTQ plus Colombians stage a public Kiss-A-Thon after bigoted mob threatens gay couple. After a gay couple was seen kissing in a park of Bogota, a crowd of homophobic women assaulted them. The group of women, one whom had a broomstick she was swinging at the couple, shouted, quote, "In this neighborhood, we don't allow sex in the park, especially in front of children. And if you don't leave, we'll lynch you," unquote. In support of the couple, hundreds of same-sex couples staged a besathon, or a kiss-a-thon, at the park, which is in Engativa neighborhood of the capital. Same-sex marriage has been legal in Colombia since 2016, and unlike the US, the LGBTQ plus is federally protected from discrimination.
Hágale, hágale. ¿El amor? ¿Cuál hijo de puta hacer el amor? ¿Por darnos un beso? ¿Por darnos un beso? ¿Viste? Y entonces usted si viene a hacer eso con un hijo de puta. Oiga, la puta, pues, hermano, ¿de qué? Aquí no. Pero, ay, hijo de puta perra. ¿Usted qué? ¿Y usted qué, gorda hijo de puta? ¿Y usted qué? ¿Y usted qué, gorda hijo de puta?
Espérate, no más. A ver.
No, sí, mire,
Aquí en este barrio no se permite el sexo ni este parque y menos delante de los niños.
¡El sexo!
¡Sí, señor! ¡Sí! ¡Hágalo al otro lado! ¡Ahora sí, pégale! ¡Ahora sí, pégale! ¡Ay, ahora sí no me porque la pega el joven!
¡Con un palo!
Venga.
¿Por qué le va a pegar a una mujer? Mira por qué me va a pegar a mí. Mira por qué me va a pegar a mí. Cochino, usted hijo de puta, sucia.
Se va.
Esa señora. Usted coge ese hijo de puta palo, entonces.
En un carro y entre todos lo linchamos. Mire, ustedes pueden hacer...
I love how the one lady is telling the other lady, or telling the guys, what are you going to hit a woman? And the old lady is there swinging a broomstick at people. I mean.
But that's you can clearly see the they and them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they can't be violent, but I can be violent against them.
Yeah.
Right.
They can't show kids, kids can't see two men kissing.
They're not
That's the
even having
equivalent of sex. That's the equivalent of sex to them is two men kissing, right? Because I'm sure they weren't having sex. But she can be violent and rude in front of children, in front of her children.
I especially appreciate the response from one of the people on our side of the community, because they were like, well, you know what? How about we call the police and they give you a ticket for harassing us?
Yeah. And they're lucky because Colombia is one of the only countries where they have these laws to protect
There's a number of other countries like Argentina.
Yes.
And other, I don't have them all here, but I know
Brazil,
Mexico does, Argentina does, Colombia does. But it doesn't matter if the police aren't enforcing it or identifying it and the people are afraid to report it.
Yeah.
Underreporting of hate crimes is a huge problem.
Yeah. It took decades for us to do sensitivity training within our police departments, okay? How long do you think it's going to take for Colombia to get there? And the reality of it is, too, it's like these old ladies are taking a big risk. I mean, good for them that they feel so compelled, and empowered to speak their mind. But, you go and you take a stick to somebody, and honestly, in self-defense, I might have to kick your ass. And, I'm not going to feel bad later that you're an old lady, because you probably shouldn't have attacked me with a stick. Now, I also know better. If I kill you, I'm probably gonna get charged for murder.
Yeah.
So how about we just call it a day, and I'm gonna just let you in your anger eat you alive, because you're gonna die miserable.
Yeah.
And it's part of this false narrative that we hear all about the gay community that we're all pedophiles.
Of course.
Oh yeah.
That's where this comes
the
from.
number one reason.
And according to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the research on this is that most child molesters, an overwhelming 90-something% identify as heterosexual. So this false narrative that's used in many countries. This is Putin's law too, what's going on with the pedophile law, because gay people automatically are. And it's a false narrative. And that's where this is coming from. This anger and fear is coming from lack of education and this false notion that's been promoted through religious organizations and political organizations.
It's what Ron DeSantis is saying by suing all these drag venues. He's actually claiming that it's indecency towards children.
Exactly.
Because we're
Children,
making.
for the most part, aren't even allowed in those bars.
No, they're not. It's a bar.
For the most part, no, they're not. It's a bar. I pose a question to those women, or just anyone in general who feels compelled to go be violent to queer people. Here's the thing. You're walking down the street, you're holding your husband's hand, you decide to kiss. How would you feel if I came up to you with a broom and started waving it around at you and going to hit you over what? You kissing? I'm sorry if you.
Because we're normal. And you're not. That's what they would say.
Yeah, well,
it's a
you
double
know what?
standard.
If you're normal and you want to go ahead and make everyone else feel miserable around you, go for it, because we're not just gonna let it happen.
Exactly.
Like, and it's honestly just angering. Like, you don't have to be like, what's the word?
I think the best thing, the best thing is
In English.
to record
Say
the
it in
lady and
Spanish.
put it on screen for us to see, because I swear to God, at some point, one of her relatives or her herself will be embarrassed of what she did.
It's ridiculous.
You know, or maybe not, but other people will be conscious of these ladies, and slowly, your generation, for example, is not going to accept this, even if they're not queer or Colombian. They're going to see this behavior and be like, "Why would I even come near a person if I have a problem with them or not?" You know.
Listen,
like,
and in the same breath, let me just tell you guys, in the same breath, you have these Latin little Latina, like abuelitas, coming after our community. And in San Francisco, just the other day, we have 80-year-old old people, okay, Asian Americans who are being almost beaten to death, kicked in the face. You know what I mean? So on two sides, like, I don't know if we're to underestimate the old people or protect them, you know, but I don't want to protect any of these old people who are coming after us and trying to make me a pedophile, because we're not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the lie that they keep promoting. And it works because people are afraid, and rightly so. They care about children. And I am the first one to say, I too am against pedophilia, and I would protect a child.
Yes.
We all are.
Yeah.
But it's the false narrative that because we're LGBTQ, we're not normal, and we are perverted and evil, and we're out to get little kids. I mean, that's the sad, pathetic story that keeps getting used, and it works, unfortunately.
I didn't know that my boyfriend and I, 16 and 15, literally going to be the same age, was pedophilia.
Well, and also, guys, you know what? What's really great is we have organizations like the Unity Coalition who are present in these countries, and clearly they got a lot of work. So us as Latinos all need to be involved.
We do. All right.
So, you know, guys, let's move on. Next, let's queer up LGBTQ plus civil rights. Oh, how appropriate, right? New poll indicates LGBTQ plus Latinos overwhelmingly reject Latinx. What's going on? The term Latinx has been used by politicians and pundits to show the disconnect between people who promote its use and the people it is supposed to describe. A recent Gallup poll surveyed Americans of Latin descent on what their preferred label was. 23% of respondents preferred Hispanic, 15% preferred Latino, and only 4% preferred Latinx. 57% of the people surveyed indicated they had no preference. Of those with no preference, a follow-up question asking what label they would choose if it was required indicated only 5% of those, or 3% of the total number of people surveyed, would have chosen Latinx. That indicates that at most 7% of all individuals surveyed would choose Latinx. Queer News Tonight would like to recognize the correlation between that number and the estimated 5% of Americans who identify as transgender or non-binary.
I wonder, in terms of the way that this term plays out politically, because in the same poll, 30% of respondents said they were less likely to support a politician who uses it. How does that translate into our political sphere, especially since Democrats in states like Florida, Texas, California, New York want to hold on to this community as a voting bloc?
I mean, I think particularly Democrats, right, should always attempt to be as inclusive as possible, right? I don't think that the answer is always to pay attention to the majority. You know, at times, the North Star is to pay attention to the most marginalized communities. I asked the same exact question that you're asking me right now to organizers from Arizona, from Florida, and from Texas. And the question was terms like defund the police or abolish ICE or Latinx. These are terms that may seem too radical for some Latinos. So what do you do in those moments? I asked them. And the response to me was always run towards the North Star.
Coming from the comedy world, being a stand-up comedian, I've used that term because I thought people would prefer it. And here in South Florida, Latinos do not like hearing Latinx if they're not queer or, I don't mind the term. I see why it's important because Latino, Latina does imply a gender, and it's the patriarchy that everything is gender male.
conformative.
It's male, right? And, most tense in Spanish is male, So it is patriarchal, so I get it. I see that the Latino community saying no to Latinx is them saying no also to pronouns and change and sexuality other than heterosexuality.
I noticed that a lot of this is very much a generational thing. Because because in my school, whoever I asked, where are you from? And they're like, I'm Hispanic. So that's what I hear for the most part. And I do hear the occasional Latinx or anything like that, but it's not as common among my generation, and we don't really care for it. It's whatever you want to use to identify yourself, use it.
Yeah.
So it's just whatever you're most.
We do know that about your generation.
We
love that.
It's very just do as you will,
Yeah.
I read that same peer review article, the Pew Research poll on this, and I found it interesting. And in some ways, if you use the term Hispanic, it sort of defeats the controversy, doesn't it? Because isn't Hispanic everything?
They do have Latin.
Because it's not a Hispanica or Hispanico, it's Hispanic.
Well,
Hispanic and Latino, they have different meanings.
They do.
Right,
Hispanic is just if you speak Spanish. So if you're from Spain or the Spanish-speaking countries.
Right.
Does not include Brazilians, for example. But Latino does include Brazilians, excludes.
Census uses both. The U.S. Census uses Hispanic / Latino.
And doesn't Spanish-speaking countries also use Latinx? That's how it was.
I've never.
That's how
heard
it
that.
started.
I've never heard
the
that
Latinx name.
I've heard last time we had one of these panels, we also heard just Latin, with an E at the end.
Yeah.
Gender neutral, not Latinx.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I had also a friend who's Latin. He's Chicano, and that's another Latin. But so he's Chicano, and he says also trans, and he says that what's the big deal? Why do we even need Latinx? Was there a need for another way to describe the Latin non-binary?
Okay. I don't know. I've heard.
But he goes by they, them, he. So.
Right. No, I'm binary trans, so I just say Hispanic or Latino. But I've non-binary friends that do prefer Latinx.
Yeah. Okay. I do know. I go back and forth from Guatemala, Mexico, and here because of business. I've never heard that term outside of Americans who are Latinos.
Yeah, I think
and
that's
a lot of them are not even. It's just Americans referring to Latinos.
It's Americans branding another, part of our community, right?
It's people outside the community that use it more than we do. So it is a weird term. I had a
conversation with a friend and it was so Latinos and they're like, wait, don't you mean Latinx? I'm like, why are you so quick to correct me when it's not even your culture, man?
Yeah.
I can't keep up. There's too many terms. I can't. I'm exhausted.
So short poll. What would you? How do you identify?
Hispanic.
Latino.
Yeah, Latino.
Hispanic, Latino.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go
Hispanic,
but I usually say Hispanic or Latino. When I ask people, I ask them, "Are you Hispanic?"
I say Hispanic more often than Latino.
I find in business and in comedy, that's the best term. Anyways, we need to move on. DJ Nena, you want to take us?
Yes, let's queer up religion. Good Lord, help us.
Let's do it.
Because the survey shows Latino culture and Catholic religion lead to LGBTQ+ discrimination. Gay is a sin. I've heard this from my own mother. Just so you know.
Been there.
15 years ago, surveys showed that 57% of Hispanic individuals called themselves Catholic. But recent surveys show that the number is now less than 47%. During that same time, those describing themselves as atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular increased from 16 to 23%. A large part of that change is attributed to partisan politics, as religions become associated more and more with the Republican Party. The large number of Latin Americans who identify as Democrats begin to separate from the church. While attendance in church may be diminishing, many Latin families still hold traditional religious social views, and that can cause issues for those who are trying to come out as LGBTQ plus to their families. Now, my background, I was raised as a very hardcore, old school Puerto Rican Catholic. That means you don't even speak until you're spoken to, duck as you're walking by, as you're speaking, all of that good stuff. And everything exited my mother's mouth like you'd get a full sentence of blah, 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 blah. That's a sin. So I'm used to hearing, that's a sin. Eso es un pecado. Ay, Dios mío.
Yeah.
You know, so you couldn't really, you know, I was raised by a hardcore Bible beater, you know, so I ran as fast as I could from the church because it was shoved down my throat my entire life. You must do your first communion. You must do your first confession. Anything you say in the house, go to church and confess. And I'm like, to say how many Our Fathers and how many Hail Marys, and then I'm absolved of sin. And now I am free to just be a sinner all over again until next Sunday when I have to, you know, obviously crouch inside that uncomfortable little booth. You know?
Maybe, let me ask you this, because I see it in a lot of Latino friends. I grew up part Catholic too. My dad's a Christian Arab. He's Greek Orthodox. My mom. So I grew up in the church. Okay. I saw the homophobia from the Greek Orthodox, and I saw the homophobia from the Catholic. I'm baptized Catholic. Catholicism is intense, right? More so than I would say Greek Orthodox people. But you left the church physically, but did it take you a minute to let go of those values that were instilled? Because we say we don't believe in those things, but then they've been instilled in us since we're children. They're not as easy to peel away. And sometimes we find ourselves like with internal homophobia or guilt or fear. You know?
I still deal with that.
Yeah.
I'll be very honest with you. Growing up as a child, I went to Spanish Mass. I never attended English Mass. We attended it occasionally, but we were always in Spanish Mass. And at that time, as a child, you don't understand all of the vocabulary. And you also don't understand the lectures and things that are being said. So you're constantly sitting in this chair going, God, when can we leave? You know? And I began to think, well, thank God it's a Catholic church because we're going to be in and out of here in about 45 minutes for sure. I started taking the time. But as I grew older and I did go to, you know, an American Mass, you know, it was nice to sit there and to listen and to just kind of digest the information, if you will. But I never felt 100% connected as a Latina, and I didn't feel 100% connected as an American. So when I chose to leave church and I said, okay, I'm done. I can't do this. There's too many rules. So I left and I never practiced prayer because, again, it was forced. Every night you had to say the rosary. Oh, and you had to say it in Spanish. Yeah. And a lot of times you're saying this rosary and you're repeating it over and over again. You have no idea what it means because you're a child and you're just taught, memorize it. This is what you're supposed to do.
I spent my whole childhood on my knees in a private Catholic school.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and luckily,
That's probably what made you gay.
No, probably. But I always say that, but I say this, thank God my parents got divorced. Sorry, guys, but it wasn't working.
Better.
So thank God they got divorced, and then we became Baptist Christians. Well, I thought that was a good idea, okay? And it just went from one crazy organized religion to another crazy organized religion. And we have to understand, look, the power of the church is so deep. It's so deeply rooted into our politics, into our culture.
Yes.
I mean, wars were fought based on religion.
Still are.
The church,
The
church like governed. Okay, they were the body.
Well, look at the attack on reproductive rights. What's their explanation?
Their number one
the Bible.
Oh, no.
The Bible.
Can't do that.
So,
but luckily, you know, there's a bridge, and the churches don't have a direct say. Well, I don't know, really. Now it's getting very confusing in this time and age, but they don't have a direct say into the legislation that's actually being made, right? But right, exactly. I know I'm eating my words right now.
Yeah. Well, right
church
now,
and state, right?
Right now, we're facing an insurgence of religion and politics all over the world. Like if you go through from India to Russia and their homophobic laws, Guatemala to the United States, religion is getting.
We have a very forward-thinking Pope right now who kind of has, you know, I mean, he makes very bold statements, and then he does like he caves in a
be a
little
bold
bit.
PR personality, but how much can you change an institution that's been the same way?
Correct.
You know.
Let religion do its thing. Granted,
exactly.
but government should be separated. That's it.
100%.
Yeah.
A division between church and state. It's in the Constitution. It's as simple as that.
And whether or not gay is a sin, I think that they're misinterpreting the Bible, because it doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that gay is a sin.
The exact.
But I think we
shall not sleep with boy. It's insinuating pedophilia, but they changed it to man shall not sleep with man, depending on which Bible you're reading.
And also, I know a lot of people feel that they belong to a religion because they were born into it, or they have a calling towards that religion. But let's be honest, you have a choice, right? You can choose a lot of your religions. So, you know, if you choose if you're a homosexual and you choose to abide by a religion that practices homophobia, then you're also choosing that. Unfortunately, you know,
there's a lot of nuances there. People have a connection to their families and communities. When you're a minority person, even more, you're navigating 3 different worlds. You're navigating that you're gay, you're navigating your minority status, and you're navigating the fact that you're someone from another country. You know, so it's a lot. And also, we have to remember that religion, although certainly we've all highlighted their negative points, we're in a religious organization that's very inclusive and supportive. So I think that for a long time, LGBTQ people felt excluded from any sort of spirituality, and I think it's wonderful that organizations here, like our beloved Sunshine Cathedral, has embraced the community, has been very inclusive, so not, you know, excommunicating us. And I think that's important too, because faith for a lot of people is important.
Yes, and
we can't just, you know, but I get where people are coming from. So shall we move on?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, next we are proud, speaking of which, next we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting the partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studio. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International service at 10:30 a.m. with more than 30,000 watching every week.
I am Daniel Quintana, CFO of Domi Real Estate, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
And that is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ plus news broadcast? right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV.
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Tarek Turjman. Follow me on TikTok, Tarek the Comedian. And on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, Chef Josie, Evyn, DJ Nena, Chris, thank you very much for being with us. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. To our LGBTQ plus world, we wish you unas buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Mucho amor.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now.